I'm a post-conviction attorney in Boulder. I went to law school to help poor people and really loved criminal defense. Thought I wanted to be a public defender for the rest of my career. Ended up in private practice and was perfectly happy representing people who actually committed crimes and helping them get lower sentences and good plea bargains that were fair. But along the way, I ended up working on some innocence cases. They're incredibly compelling, and it's really hard to not keep doing as many of them as I can, money notwithstanding, lack of money notwithstanding. So one of the things I learned in law school from a human rights professor was families are stronger than armies. And I think that really has come home to me working on the clemency videos. And we have some family members tonight. This is Billy Edwards' mom, and Mia Arrington is the sister of Abron Arrington. These are both of my clients. And Charles Farrar's family, again, is in the audience, and I really appreciate their willingness to share what frankly is their trauma, decades of trauma, because it's become so abundantly clear to me that the legal system doesn't pay attention to how wrongful convictions impact not only the wrongfully incarcerated person, but an entire family system. And so I'm really delighted they can be here tonight. I could speak more, but I'll save it because I think I've gone over a minute. But if I could now, I'd like to just pass the microphone over to Donna Rogers, who's Billy's mom.
Hello, my name is Donna Rogers, and my son Billy Edwards is incarcerated at Lyman Correctional Facility. He was convicted in 1997, and I think the hardest thing for me is through all this time is that when he was first being charged and they were going across what a plea deal, whatever, they offered him a plea deal with a 15-year cap, and it would be, I guess, a second-degree murder, or I don't even remember back then, but at any rate, he asked me what should he do. And I said, you know what, Billy, only you and the man above know what happened. And he's like, Mom, I didn't do it. And I said, well, then don't take a deal. Never did I ever think that he was going to have 3 trials, all of them in hung juries, and then the third one, the judge instructed them to go back and not come out until they had a verdict. And so here we are today, hoping that the truth will prevail.
Yep, and again, this is Mia Arrington. Abron Arrington is at Colorado State Penitentiary. He has served 28 years, 30 years? It is almost 30 years for a first-degree murder. He did not commit. His cousin committed it. People testified against him. Other people who actually did the crime got less time. He went to trial, maintained his innocence, and is doing life.
Like Gail said, my brother served 30 years. November the 7th will be exactly 30 years that he's in. We're like 11 months apart. I have a twin brother. It's hard on the family. It's very hard to maintain someone's innocence when especially you know what kind of person they are and stuff, and you could try to justify it by talking to people, but some people just don't understand unless they're in that person's shoes at that moment and stuff. And Abron, as far as keeps up his spirits, he keeps our spirits up, which is really surprising to our family, and he missed so many things with our family. He missing out on his daughter's grandchildren, the death of my grandfather, which he wrote a letter off to my grandfather like maybe a week before he passed away. It's like he had some type of sense that my grandfather wasn't going to be here no longer, so we got the letter to him right before he passed away, so my grandfather could rest in peace, knowing that Abron appreciated everything that he had to offer to us when we were children, and that was the main thing that he had in the letter that to tell him, because he's been waiting for my brother to be released because he knew my brother didn't do it. I mean, sitting here trying to explain to it, just very, like I told Gail, it's very emotional for me. just to even talk about it and to even see that film, it was just so compelling because it goes over so many things of what he's thinking, and I'm sure Abram's thinking the same thing out of the past 30 years that he's been locked up for things that he didn't do. So.
My name is Kristy Martinez, and I am the director of the Korey Innocence Project at the law school at the University of Colorado. And I work along with faculty members at the law school and law students to investigate claims of actual innocence, people similar to the gentleman that you saw in the movie today, and some of the cases that you hear about today. I guess one of the hardest parts about looking into these cases post-conviction is just plain tracking down the materials, just trying to start many years later to track down the materials, to see where the witnesses were, what they were saying. And the interesting thing about tonight for me was I have met Miss Edwards before, and I met her when I testified as an expert at a case at her son's case down south, asking for the basics. Alls we were asking for, and alls I was trying to talk about to the court was to let the court know what it would possibly be like to investigate a case post-conviction without having ever had access to any of the original records. And what we were asking for in that particular case, at least what I was saying was, I wouldn't know where to begin. As an attorney with many years of experience investigating post-conviction cases, I wouldn't even know where to begin. It would be like trying to investigate a ghost, quite literally. And in that particular case, alls I was there to say was, I don't think I could ever possibly investigate an innocence claim without originally seeing the discovery from the case. And the district attorney in that particular case was fighting that, was fighting just the basic, please look at our file and tell us if there's anything at all that you think that we didn't get accurate. It was one of the finest moments of my career, was to just say, I couldn't possibly chase the tail of a ghost. One of the reasons why I'm so excited to be sitting next to a district attorney in this particular case is, and I'll let you talk, but only for a second, is the fact that not all district attorneys fight turning over files. In fact, some district attorneys have invited people like us from the defense bar into their circles to talk about how to responsibly look at these cases, and are trying and making an attempt to change how Colorado is looking at these sorts of things. So I promise I'll let you talk, but I want to let you know one of the second finest moments of my career was trying to reach across the aisles and work with someone to see how we could follow the lead of other jurisdictions in being willing to look at the files.
Well, good evening. My name is Michael Dougherty. I'm the district attorney for Boulder. And Kristy, I really appreciate those kind remarks. And I want to congratulate Bill and the folks at GoodCinema for putting together such a powerful film and sharing with us tonight. Thank you so much. So when I went to law school, at one point during law school, I thought I was going to become a public defender and represent poor people accused of criminal offenses. And I had a professor of mine who to this day is a mentor to me, who told me that if I found the right district attorney's office, the mission would be to do justice and do the right thing. And I went to the Manhattan district attorney's office at a law school, and I worked there for a little over 12 years and ended up helping run the day-to-day operations for the office and handling major cases. But moved to Colorado because there was the opportunity on a federal grant to look back on cases where people are currently incarcerated in Colorado for murder, manslaughter, or sexual assault, to see if any of them had been wrongfully convicted. And under the federal grant, we could only look at cases where DNA evidence would be the determining factor, and we'll talk more about that a little later tonight. But that work led to, for example, the exoneration of Robert Dewey, who had served 17 years in state prison here in Colorado before being exonerated by the project. he was convicted of a murder in Grand Junction, where there was no prosecutorial misconduct and no police misconduct. It was just a terrible injustice and a nightmare that I could never imagine. So I appreciate the opportunity for us to be here tonight. I'm honored to be part of the discussion. And when I became district attorney in Boulder and joined some outstanding people, some of whom are here in the audience tonight, members of the office, one of the first things we did together was set up a conviction integrity unit. And it's the first one in the state run out of a district attorney's office. What makes it really unique from other projects in other states is our collaboration with the defense bar. And I know Kristy makes it sound as though we invited her in, but actually it was a real collaborative effort from the beginning, and it's built on trust, and it's with the idea that we're gonna have a thorough, effective, and transparent process. So when we get applications for review from people who claim they're actually innocent, members of the defense bar are helping us with that review and being a part of that process. And I'm really excited to have their help as this project gets underway, and I'm looking forward to our discussion tonight, so thank you.
Thank you all. Whoa, that's hot. Thank you all. We'll go ahead and open things up real quick. We'll get to you in just 1 second. There's someone that wanted to have speak real quick, that he himself has been involved in the judicial system and was wrongfully convicted. Jason Sadowski, please.
Thank you. I haven't done this before. So the movie was really, really powerful. It was just a lot of the same issues for me. You feel like you're stuck in the twilight zone when nobody believes you. But even worse than my experience, even after we proved that it was not only a wrongful conviction, but an actual prosecutorial and police conspiracy, there's still a good friend of mine who's in prison after we proved that no crime existed. And so part of my mission is to try to help him and bring attention to his case. His name is Charles Leroy Cope. I apologize, this is pretty fresh for me. I've been out less than a year. And I lost everything and I'm trying to rebuild. And I'm really, really enlightened to see that people are out here and care and are trying to make a difference. And if anybody has any questions or I can help in any way, please contact me after we're done here. Thank you very much.
So, sir, I don't know if your friend has already applied to the Innocence Project? Sir? But
We have been trying to get a hold of him because his attorney chose an affirmative defense and conspired with the prosecution to try to put me away. He has no legal recourse. He is not eligible for appeal in Michigan. The way the statutes are written, his attorney was an affirmative defense. The only shot we have is a writ of habeas corpus and trying to claim of actual innocence. And I need help for
sure,
that.
I think Ms. Martinez can get you in touch with someone at an Innocence Project in Michigan.
Thank you. My appeal attorney was a longtime member. Peter John Van Hoek was my appeal attorney, and him and his wife have a long history with the Innocent Project, as well as my second trial attorney, Tony Ruiz, who I'm greatly indebted to.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you so much, panelists, for being willing to talk about this important issue. Here's my question. I think that increasingly, without DNA evidence, a lot of post-conviction motions for release get denied, even though there's other evidence of actual innocence. It was, Mr. Dougherty referred to the Conviction Integrity Unit and Mr. Dewey's release. I was a public defender during the time that was going on, and of the many, many cases that were submitted to that unit, Mr. Dewey was the only person who was found innocent, and then only because of DNA evidence. And it was our impression during that review process that absent DNA evidence showing actual innocence, the unit wasn't willing to look at any other cases. So I'm wondering what Judge Martinez, oh, I guess you're not sworn in yet, I'm sorry, what Ms. Martinez and Ms. Johnson and Mr. Dougherty, what your position is on whether absent DNA evidence of actual innocence, post-conviction claims should be seriously considered in Colorado.
They have to be seriously considered. We have to do a better job. I'm the daughter of a mathematician, and I was very interested to see that figure at the end of the film, about 120,000 wrongfully convicted people in the United States as an estimate. I would say here in Colorado, I mean, you can divide that number by 50. That's a rough way to do it, right? But you know, you can also look at research that's been done by Professor Sam Gross in Michigan, and the percentage of wrongful convictions is thought to be anywhere from 1% to several percent. I can tell you, having worked in the system for 20 years, that seems right to me, based on what I know and what I've seen. And so what does that mean in Colorado? In Colorado, we've had a handful of exonerations in the last couple of decades. We are missing hundreds of men, largely men, some women, who are in prison today in Colorado for crimes they did not commit. We have to do a better job. And I say we, I mean broadly. I think one of the terrific things about the film is how important the non-lawyer friend is, right? I mean, that person made that happen. So we are all important. The family members are important. If you're a family member of someone who's been wrongly convicted, here's my plea to you, in addition to finding a good lawyer. Keep every piece of paper from that case. Do not throw anything away. I don't care if 20 years has gone by. Do not throw anything away. Keep it until you can get it in the hands of the right person. We have to do a better job working together with prosecutors, as defense attorneys, as judges, and Kristy Martinez is about to be sworn in as a Boulder County Court judge. And we can all work together. There are investigators in the audience. You know, this is a community effort. We have to do a better job. It haunts me. We are missing hundreds right now in this state.
Hi, Ann. I think my response to your inquiry would be twofold. One is we know that there's lots of other factors that contribute to wrongful convictions. We know that unreliable, the snitch testimony, snitch is slang, but incentivized testimony is the term that they like to use. If incentivized testimony contributes to a wrongful conviction, then in my opinion, that should be just as likely to contribute to an exoneration. And the jurisdictions throughout the United States are all looking at that. They're trying to decide how to deal with that, if that can be remedied in the court, if there should be better jury instructions. In Colorado, in my opinion, has some work that they could do in regards to informing the jury quite properly on the incentives that have been received by co-defendants in exchange for their testimony. So first, if that's just one example, but there's more. We also have a lot of work to do, and I know that Michael Dougherty is working on this as well, but we have work to do with false confessions. And in fact, there's going to be a film on November 10th and 11th from part of the Denver Film Festival, if you're interested in going, that's going to be dealing with false confessions. And so we know that the DNA has exonerated in 25% of the cases defendants who had actually confessed to the crime. And so if we know that there's room for improvement in terms of training law enforcement on how not to coerce confessions, then false confessions and evidence about false confessions and expert testimony about false confessions should also, in my mind, lead towards exonerations. So what I'm trying to say is there are 6 key factors that the New York Innocence Project likes to talk about that contribute to wrongful convictions. All 6 key factors, in my mind, should contribute to a court being very interested in granting hearings and possibly new trials when appropriate in a post-conviction posture. I don't understand why DNA is the only thing that we look at just because it makes us feel the most comfortable. This is not a comfortable situation. And what we have to do is be fearless and transparent and deeply engaged in whether or not we got it right, because we know that we don't always get it right. And we also, as a society, know that there could be, in the context of a criminal justice case, no greater miscarriage of justice than the denial of due process, as it's been something that we have held so dear for the entire history of our country. So if it's that important, then that's how fearless we should be when we inquire. And certainly that's what I plan. The spirit of that will come with me in my heart every day that I sit on the bench. And the day that I don't feel that, I'll step down. It will be done.
Hi, Ann. Thank you for the question. So I completely agree that review of cases should not be limited to DNA evidence. Under that federal grant, that was the only category of cases we were allowed to look at. If I thought that review completed every single case in the state of Colorado, we would not have launched the Conviction Integrity Unit earlier this year. There's a lot of work that remains to be done. When I look at some of the causes of wrongful convictions, we've made some progress here in the state of Colorado just in the last few years. So when I think about mistaken identifications, false confessions, and what Kristy referred to as snitch testimony or jailhouse informants, we're taking steps as a state, I think, that we should be proud of without losing sight of the fact that there's a lot of work that still remains. So in 2015, a group of prosecutors, the New York Innocence Project, and the defense bar came together to push for and enact eyewitness identification reform here in the state of Colorado, to use best practices around identifications, and I was reminded of that in watching the film, so that that would never happen now in the state of Colorado. And then after that law was passed, we traveled the entire state training law enforcement on the mandatory requirements for eyewitness identification. So a good example of this, one requirement would be law enforcement used to call someone who's a victim of a crime and say, we got the guy, come on down to the police station and make an identification. They're now prohibited from saying, we got the guy. And after an identification is made, they cannot say, you picked the right person. So all those steps were taken in 2015. In 2016, with an eye towards false confessions, prosecutors, New York Innocence Project, and Defense Bar again came together and got a law passed that requires police to video any interrogation or interview that happens in a police station on a Class 1 or Class 2 felony. So again, a step in the right direction, although more work needs to be done. And I anticipate that this coming legislative session, again, the merry band of the Innocence Project, some prosecutors, and defense attorneys are coming together to have jailhouse informant legislation passed, where we're going to start to do a better job of tracking and sharing information around jailhouse informants. It was the subject of the meeting we had with the elected DAs just a couple weeks ago. So I agree that we have to be open to other ways, and certainly that's something we're pushing for right now. So thank you.
And we have a question from the audience here about an upcoming election here. So we have an Attorney General election in a few weeks. To your knowledge, how did the candidates stand on post-conviction relief?
I don't have an opinion.
Hard pass.
So there's a smarter part of me that's saying pass right now, but I'll do my best to answer the question. Having spoken with both candidates, I believe Phil Weiser is interested in post-conviction review of cases. I've shared with him that we started the Conviction Integrity Unit because we believe at the Boulder DA's office that the mission of doing justice means also having a process for after someone's convicted, if they claim they were actually innocent, to go back and discover if we made a mistake and to correct it and to do everything possible to get to the right outcome. And I know that Phil Weiser, who's one of the candidates for Attorney General, agrees with that premise, and he has stated, I think if you look at his website, it's on there, that he would bring back the Conviction Integrity Unit that the Attorney General's office had years ago under that federal grant. I don't think George Brockler's addressed that on his website or publicly. So,
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having this forum and for showing this movie. My husband and I are really good friends of Abron Arrington. And I think that while it's really, really important to talk about all these technical issues, I think that one of the strong points about this movie was connecting to this guy who struggled and, survived all these years wrongfully convicted. And so, I just want to say that I know Abron, and he's just an amazing guy. I know that people that are not so amazing also get wrongfully convicted, so I'm not saying that that's the reason why he should get clemency, but I just wanted people to know he's got patented inventions. He's in the who's who of inventors. He's learned 3 languages. He's just a very brilliant young man who's in a situation and making the most of it. And those of us that know him can't wait for him to get back out here. I can't even imagine the things that he would do if he was free, considering all the things that he's done while he's been incarcerated. So I guess I would like to know a little bit more about the people that we're talking about that we're going to support petitions for.
Thank you so much. So it's our goal to put up a website soon that is going to showcase clemency materials for a number of clients that myself and other attorneys in my firm and other attorneys in other firms have been working on. Let me be clear, it's not a requirement to get clemency that you're actually innocent, but the use of the clemency power to remedy wrongful convictions is long recognized and well established, and it's considered sort of a fail-safe when the legal system fails. But to get back to your point, I can't do justice to even just these 4 cases tonight because Bill doesn't want me to talk the whole time, and I could because I care about these clients so much. But we do want to start shining a light. So Abron Arrington had no criminal record, went to the Air Force, was very successful, was honorably discharged, came back to Colorado Springs where his family was. He was just supposed to be there a few days on his way to start his life. He had a very promising career ahead of him. And this homicide happened, and he got caught up in it because of his cousin, I think. And he finds himself in the system, and he has not gotten out to this day. He is well loved by his family. They know he's innocent. He knows he's innocent. His first conviction was originally overturned because of a Batson violation, which Abron Arrington is African-American. When he went to trial the first time, the prosecution exercised a challenge to jurors in a race-based way. The courts agreed with that claim and reversed his conviction. He went back down, had a second trial, and got unfortunately convicted again, because it's very hard. Once the system gets its tentacles into you, it's very hard to extract yourself. And I think that's what happened to Abron. So we are working on the clemency effort for him, and anyone in the audience who wants to support, contact me, contact the governor. I will be happy to give you more information about the case if you're interested, and we can, again, make it available on the website. Failing clemency, we will work on investigation and litigation. We're not going to rest until we remedy this. Billy Edwards. Billy was in, what's the best American high school students thing? Can you say that?
Who's Who in America.
Who's Who in American high school students several years in a row. Really smart guy. He'd had a little bit of trouble with the law, but not much. He was a very young man. He was interrogated for hours by the police. This was a gang shooting. The prosecutions, this is in El Paso County, Colorado Springs, outside a nightclub in the middle of the night. It was, the prosecution and law enforcement's theory was always that there were 2 shooters. Everyone on the scene said there were 2 shooters. And this is one of the things that just frustrates me the most about this case, because they convicted my client wrongly, and they've closed the case, and they've never convicted anyone else. This is the case that Judge Martinez was referring to earlier. So in order for me to do my job, as Mr. Edwards feels post-conviction attorney, I need the basic discovery, because before I go out and interview witnesses 20 years later, I need to know what they said to the police officers 20 years earlier. That's just, it would be malpractice for me not to do that. And I'm going to name names. District Attorney Dan May and his office has refused to give me the discovery. They are doing everything they can to impede this investigation. That just makes me want to fight harder, frankly, because I smell a rat. And they know it. And they are doing everything they can to stop us from uncovering what happened in this case. As his mom mentioned, and this is just a huge red flag to me as an attorney, he went to trial the first time. Jury couldn't reach a unanimous verdict. Jury hung. He went to trial a second time. Jury couldn't reach a unanimous verdict. They hung. He goes to trial a third time. The jury sends out a note. We cannot agree. And then the judge gives what lawyers in the audience will know is called a modified Allen instruction, which essentially is supposed to tell jurors that they should try and reach a verdict if they can, but they shouldn't give up their honest beliefs about the weight of the evidence just for the sake of reaching agreement. These instructions are notoriously problematic, and there's lots of cases where certain instructions like this are considered unduly coercive and convictions get reversed. What haunts me about Mr. Edwards' case is that the Allen instruction that was given at his third trial, where you know that trial judge was frustrated and didn't want to do the trial a fourth time, right? He said 3 juries come back hanging. That instruction is not in the record, and it has not been able to be reconstructed on remand proceedings, and here we are. A man sits in prison today. This is shoddy. And there's lots of other things I could say about that case, but one of the things you see when we look at these cases is bad lawyering. The lawyer who represented Mr. Edwards at all 3 of his trials had bar disciplinary problems, severe ones, had his bar license suspended for years later on. And his appellate attorney, same thing. I mean, these are public disciplinary records. He has had the worst luck in the world when it comes to attorneys. And that's what happens when certain people end up in prison for crimes they didn't commit. Do you want me to keep going or stop? I don't. No, I can keep talking, but I don't want to dominate. I can't do that and ignore Mr. Ellis, so we're going to do both. Charles Farrar, again, his victim, the alleged victim, recanted 100% under oath while represented by her own attorney. I believe that was now 10 years ago. That was on a motion for new trial. His case went up to the Colorado Supreme Court, and he lost by the narrow margin of 4 votes to 3. 3 justices on the Colorado Supreme Court thought that he should have gotten a new trial because looking at all of the evidence, including a recantation, that a new jury would probably acquit him. He remains in prison today. We are fighting in the courts as well as clemency. We are in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit on a federal habeas for Mr. Farrar, where the state of Colorado, your taxpayer dollars at work, is taking the position that it does not violate the due process clause for an innocent man to be wrongly convicted based on perjured testimony. That is not an exaggeration. That is in their court papers. Mr. Ellis won federal habeas. This is the one where the alleged victim said later on she had false memory syndrome. That allegation came out. It's a shocking story, but essentially that young girl was being sexually abused by her brother, my client's son. Nobody knew that when the prosecution train left the station. My client got charged, and months of court processes happened before DNA tests reveal that that young man was sexually abusing her. The accusation against my client came out after the true abuser was basically told her to. She wanted him released from prison years ago. He's still in prison today. And this is the problem with this Lifetime Supervision Act in Colorado, because people convicted of sex offenses are going to do life in prison unless they get parole. And as a practical matter, they are not going to get parole unless they successfully complete sex offender treatment. And they're not going to successfully complete sex offender treatment unless they admit they did something. And for people like Mark Ellis and Charles Farrar, they cannot do that because they're innocent, and therefore they cannot get out of prison, and they are doing life. So that's a long answer, and I hope I satisfied you a little bit.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you to the panel. It's been a great show. One thing I would be really interested in the perspective on is, we talk about the system. The system is people, right? I mean, the example that Professor Martinez and Gail, the examples that they gave with the DA's office, I know I'm preaching to the choir and folks know this, but there are horrendous examples around the country of the exact same thing and much worse. And so what I'm interested in, because I kind of experienced this myself in law school, is that how do we get to a point where we have assistant and deputy DAs and then DAs that run and get elected? How do we get to the point where for them, even though in law school they would regurgitate the mantra that they're supposed to seek justice and not win, but we get to a point where it's tongue-in-cheek, you win at all costs, and you get to a point where you're opposing someone like yourself seeking discovery, you're fighting tooth and nail when DA evidence is solid. I think part of it is somehow those who are selected to go to law school and those who go through law school, I think it's a combination of who you select and how the system fails them. You've literally got a situation where there are, people going through law school, students, I knew plenty of them. In their minds, they don't mind, for example, doing any number of Schedule I drugs. In a few years, they'll be responsible for putting people in cages for doing that. And I don't know the mental gymnastics that they go through for that, but there's something wrong with the system that doesn't allow them to do that. And, just a couple more tiny examples. I mean, in criminal law and criminal procedure, examples where students are voicing opinions on something that they have no concept about. They've never been arrested, never been in jail, never been through the system. But the system says, no, you're smart, you get to have an opinion on this, even though they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. So I guess all that's a long way of just saying, how is the legal education system producing certain district attorneys and people who work in those offices that do this? I mean, there's something wrong, I think. So I'd be interested in the panel's perspective on that.
There's a lot to unpack there, and I think the other panelists are going to have some comments, but let me just start by talking about prosecutorial misconduct and deterrence. I think our system is quite hypocritical. When we look at what happens on the street with people charged with DUIs, it's well recognized that, the sanctions that you want are the sanctions that are swift and sure, and that is going to be the way to stop that behavior from recurring, which as a society we would agree we want to stop that behavior from recurring. Flip the page now to prosecutorial misconduct. I mean, it is shocking how little sanctions are happening in Colorado and across the country. Prosecutors don't get named when they commit misconduct in judicial opinions. The judges are very deferential, and they don't get sanctioned and they don't get punished. Well, we know what happens. We prosecutors know what happens when you let someone get away with bad conduct and you don't swift and surely punish them. It continues, it gets worse, it grows, it lasts for decades. You have law enforcement, pressuring witnesses to say things that aren't true just so they can get an arrest. You have prosecutors who use incentivized testimony to convict someone who didn't do it. And maybe they don't think in their mind that that's what they're doing, but they get away with it, and they get away with it, and they worry about their conviction rate. And so, judges, frankly, need to be better about sanctioning this conduct. And, look, if we could clone Michael Dougherty, I would. We would have a Michael Dougherty in Arapahoe County, and El Paso County, and Denver County, and I'd be happy. We can't do that biologically, but although maybe in 10 years. But we can do it politically. We can do it politically. And so, I would say get in touch with grassroots organizations. I know the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition has been working on a Know Your DA candidate campaign, and I may be garbling that. Latif, correct me if I'm wrong, Hassan Latif. But, get involved and know, we vote for our district attorneys. And so wherever you are, try and vote for the most progressive district attorney you can, because there are good ones. And I'll hand the microphone over to one.
Well, I really can't thank Gail enough for what she said, but believe me when I say that I've had the honor and privilege of working with outstanding prosecutors throughout my career, some of whom are here tonight. And they're here because they believe, as I do, that the mission of doing justice is what gets them out of bed in the morning and what we do every day and try to do every day. I will say that part of it is just instilling in law students, prosecutors, that the mission of doing justice means not only ensuring public safety and standing up and fighting for victims of sex assault and homicide, but also recognizing that criminal justice reform is not a mutually exclusive concept. That there are things we could do to improve the criminal justice system that actually enhances public safety. And it kind of goes to your question. It's Travis, right? Travis, yes. It goes to your question about if we do our job right as district attorneys, we build more trust and confidence in the criminal justice system. And to me, that has a very real impact, because I've had too many cases where witnesses will not come forward because they don't trust law enforcement, they don't trust the justice system, they don't trust government. So I had a shooting in New York City when I was a prosecutor there where about 40 people witnessed it and 0 cooperated, including the victim who survived and told me, "Don't worry about it, I'll take care of it." I said, "No, see, now I'm really worried about it, actually." But getting people to trust and have confidence in the system is something we need to do more of, which is why we continue to push for reform and do a lot of community outreach to talk about what we do in the district attorney's office. The people in the Boulder DA's office, and this predates me, I don't deserve any credit for it, they have the highest level of integrity and ethics, and I see it every day. They see things that people should not have to see. Child porn, murder scenes, I could go on, but you don't want to hear it. They see it and live it every day. So it's about supporting them and giving them every ounce of support we can in that difficult work while reminding them that every single case, they have to do the right thing. What I was really struck by in the movie, and it's kind of an undercurrent throughout the whole movie, is the crime rate in New York City back then. In 1980, the year of the murder in the film, there were 1,810 other people killed in New York City. When you think about that compared to how many people died on 9/11, and think about that was just an every year occurrence in a city, those kind of crises wear on us as a society. It's not an excuse. There's no excuse. But we have to recognize the impact that these things have on all of us in the system, including public defenders. And I do want to say one quick note about, because Gail was talking about, and we've talked some about defense attorneys, we're lucky in Colorado overall that we have a robust public defender system. I don't know if you saw the John Oliver show from a year or two ago where he made appropriately fun of some public defender system in another state. That's not the case here in Colorado. They're really dedicated, they're well-funded, they've done a good job getting more resources. And as a prosecutor, you always want a defense attorney who's doing their utmost to represent their client. You want them to do everything they can for their client so that you know that you're doing the right thing as well. So I think, Travis, to your question, it goes to training, it goes to support, it also goes to us making sure that we have a connection with the community so we're doing what they want. So I appreciate Gail's point about getting out to vote, but also about building a bridge between the community and the DA's office is really very critically important.
Hello. My name is Sean Ashi Taylor. I am the Deputy Executive Director of Second Chance Center. Second Chance Center is the leading reentry organization in the state of Colorado right now. And I'm a formerly incarcerated individual who did 22 years in prison. And the governor, Bill Ritter, commuted my sentence. And now, I teach a class in Lyman Correctional Facility, and I also teach a class in CSP. So every Tuesday and Thursday, I see Billy Edwards. Every Friday, I see Abron Arrington. Both of them are friends of mine. And I can tell you that today, Billy Edwards, he runs his own cognitive behavioral change course in Lyman Correctional Facility. Abron Arrington is one of the absolute most smartest individuals I have ever met in my life. He's a genius who has several patents, and he teaches every day a religion of peace. I urge everyone in the audience to email Governor Hickenlooper on behalf of these men. There are some other men in prison. William Lee, Brian Lee, Eric Leitner. All individuals who deserve a second chance. Please, I once again urge you, email Governor Hickenlooper on behalf of Billy Edwards, of Abron Arrington, of Charles Farrar, and anyone else that you know. If you have a phone, do it now. As someone who got their second chance, I can tell you, we cherish it more than anything, more than anything. And I believe they're coming home. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
We've got several text questions about how this has been for the family members. A couple of things that have been asked. What can we do as a community to support wrongfully convicted and incarcerated persons? What can we do to support the families? And what has it been like for the families? And what has helped you get through these times?
As far as what gets us through is communication with Abron and making sure that we can be able to provide the things that keep him going. He likes reading a lot, so we make sure that we order books to keep his mind set on other things besides there. He's always been a positive person, like everyone has spoke about him. He has his own patent. We keep him going. I consistently had to do a lot of things to get the patent for him to save lives. It's a flood device, which probably could have saved a lot of things of people's way of living for the hurricane flooding, the Katrina, the Texas flooding. If you could just go out there, like you said, and contact the governor and let him know this is what kind of person they locked away. You know, someone that thinks about lives, you know, of saving lives, not taking life away. Abron is just, you know, like I told Gail, I mean, you would have to meet him and talk to him, because some people are like, well, she's just going to say that because that's her brother. But I advise you, if you write him a letter, he will respond. Write him a letter, Abron J. Arrington, and he will write you back. And then after you read that letter, you'll find out what kind of person they locked away. Such a great person. He got locked up doing the right thing, and they took him away. He only been home for like only a couple of days, and he's locked up for murder. You know, my mom and my father, all of us stick by my cousins. We have so many relatives that ask about him on a daily basis. Even when I had Facebook, I don't have it anymore. But they would ask, how's Abron doing? Because they know what kind of character he carries. He's always been like that. He's always said, when he said he's going to do something, he always do it. When he said he was going to go in the military, when he was 14, he was so happy about following my uncle in the military, and he did it. You know, when he said he wanted to do this, when he got out the military, he already had things lined up for him as a man. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. And so, you know, with that being said, the family, it takes, it's stressful. You know, it's very stressful because people pass, then you have to tell them, you know, a girl that he might have loved, you know what I'm saying, now you have to tell him that she's married someone else. You know, it's things that, you know, he probably want to have another kid, and he cannot do that being locked up. So it's a lot of pressure, you know. Me being the only girl, I'm always the main one that has to do everything. So, you know, because my parents don't live here. So I have to communicate back and forth to everybody, so everybody be on the same page of everything, because they don't know, you know. I went down a couple weeks ago, I think last month, and he won first prize for his patent through a company, I guess, called Defy. So it's just a lot of things that we have to do, you know, for my brother to keep him going. As far as a community, don't let this happen again to someone else's life or their family. It could be pricey too, you know, the things that you have to do, phone calls, you know what I'm saying, sending things so he can have a commissary. There's a lot of things that go with that. That evidently somebody's making money, but I'm not making any. But to me, that's what the prison system is about. It's about money. It's not about is anybody right or wrong. It's about money, and that's what they do. You know, and the poor is the ones that really get done in by this situation of incarceration and stuff. What the community could do is never, like I said, let this happen again. And I'm gonna let you have this.
I'm not really very good at this, so I think basically what I want to say is that my son Billy has always been a good kid. I had him when I was 16, so him and I kind of grew up together. And in some areas of his life, I think I was maybe more of a friend than a mother. But I love him so much, and this has been so hard for me because a lot of his family on his father's side, when his father passed away, everybody just kind of forgot about us. And Billy's been doing this time with me and a couple of my relatives that go see him every other week. And for him to be as positive as he is, I don't know how he does it. I don't think I could have ever done 20-something years in prison and knowing what goes on and all the different things that they deal with on a daily basis. And I think also the correctional officers, I think they know what buttons to push. And I think that when people have a life sentence, I think they push those buttons to see if that person's going to jump. And when that person doesn't jump, I kind of laugh at Billy now because he's so smart and he reads all the ARs and all the rules and everything. And when somebody says something to him, he gets the book out and says, okay, well, this is what the AR says. Why aren't you doing that? And then the officers get mad at him, you know. But, I mean, he helps a lot of people there. I think he has a lot of ideas that he'd like to do when he gets out. And I just honestly keep hoping and praying that the day's going to come and that I get to see him free on the outside before I leave this earth.
So can I just quickly introduce Debbie Farrar, who's Charles Farrar's wife, who I have to say is my hero in many ways. One reason for which is she married him while he was in prison and then helped rebuild the family and bring his sons all together. But she's also here several days after neck surgery. Thank you for being here, Debbie.
You're welcome. I don't normally take the time to speak in front of people, particularly regarding my personal life. But the question was asked a few minutes ago about how does it affect the family? How do the families deal with it? I met my husband back in 1982. We were high school sweethearts. Both of us were military children, and orders dictated that we each go our own way with our families. We looked for each other for almost 32 years before I found him, and when I found him, he was incarcerated. And I knew, without even knowing what he was in there for, that he was not guilty for whatever it was. I had known him as a young man, and we were each other's first high school sweethearts. I knew him intimately. When I found out he was incarcerated at Sterling, I started to commute out here from Texas. That's when I found out that he had 3 very strapping, full of energy young sons. And I began to build a relationship with them and take them under my wings as well. You want to know what it's like for a family to grow up or to wake up every day and know that their loved one is not only incarcerated, but wrongfully incarcerated, not only for a crime that happened, but for a crime that never took place. He has been buried into the system time and time again and turned down and denied over and over again. Fortunately, I'm a very strong woman and do not need to have him right next to my side every day to be able to get through my life, but I do want him by my side every day where he deserves. I watch our sons every single day, and I see them go through struggles that if their father was only home and just had that 1 minute with them, their struggle would be taken care of. You wake up every day, and you know that you're alone. You know that no matter what the day brings to you, you have to put on your big girl pants and you have to face it and you have to take care of it. When you are suffering, and you know that your husband and your children are suffering, you carry that on your shoulders every day and you never let anybody ever know. Marrying my husband, even though he was incarcerated, and my father thought that I had completely lost my mind, was probably one of the best things that I could have done, because he was my soulmate when I was 15, and he is still my soulmate today at the age of 51. I have 2 children, and he has 4 children, and we have all come together as a family. One of them was living out in Oklahoma with a foster family, and as soon as he turned of age and was old enough, he reunited with his Farrar family out here in Colorado. We are all together now, and this is where we will all be. I faithfully drive out to Sterling every single Sunday for 2.5 hours to see my husband. And the only thing that keeps me from there is doctors putting neck braces around me and telling me I can't drive. Yeah, I'm not sure what their problem is either. So if you want to know what it is like to wake up every day and know that your loved one is incarcerated, remember this: he's not the only one incarcerated. His whole entire family is incarcerated right along with him. And we long and we pray for the day that he is able to come home, so that our children may once again begin to grow and our family can function as a unit, so that Christmas days aren't made up of several over-the-speaker phone calls with him, but rather him being able to be there to play Santa Claus. I have a daughter that will be graduating high school this year and going on to Colorado University of Denver next year on a full ride. Thank you, Sarah, for the great GPA. And I would love to be able to have our husband home to see our last child graduate. Time is all we have, and time is all that's given to us. And we will be here by him, and we will wait for him. And we love him with all that we have in us. So remember, it's not just one person that's incarcerated. It is the whole entire family. Thank you all, and have a great day.
Thank you so much, Debbie. We have one more over from the other side.
I couldn't not do this, Bill, so hopefully this is okay. One of the things that struck me in the film was the abuse that, the gentleman suffered, not just in prison, but, the cops who set him up and things of that nature. What is being done? Because I don't think it's just justice if they get out. There's people who put them in there and work against them. What's being done after the fact to those people? Is there anything that you guys can say to that?
So I think that's an excellent question. Thanks for asking it. What you see on the screen are violations of civil rights, and people have legal remedies, particularly in federal court. But that said, the law puts up a lot of barriers. There's a lot of what's called immunity given to prosecutors who do bad things, and it's difficult. Those cases aren't easy. But they can be filed, and going to specialized civil rights attorneys, they can file them to try and hold people accountable once someone has been exonerated. And there's really, I always think there's 3 purposes to that. Number 1, because you can really fully get into what happened and why, and question people under oath about why they did what they did and who did what, and get information. Number 2, to provide compensation to the person who was abused or locked up. And number 3, deterrence, because again, we need deterrence so that in the future, other police and prosecutors don't do the same thing.
So I agree with Gail. The only thing I would add to that is Colorado is now one of the states that has a compensation statute in place for individuals who've been wrongfully convicted. And again, none of this would repair the nightmare of being in state prison when you're in fact innocent. But we had legislation passed, the prosecutors and defense attorneys in Colorado united behind this a few years ago, where if someone's wrongfully convicted and exonerated, they receive $70,000 a year from the state, along with health care for the rest of their lives, and if they want to go back to school, tuition. And again, none of that repairs the wrongful conviction, but I think recognizes that the state has an obligation and the burden to try to support that person, to help them get back on their feet after release from state prison. I think it's a good thing that Colorado is one of the states that has that now.
I would just like to say that one of the, and then I'm going to let Gail respond to the compensation issue, but just the entire notion of what was sort of compelling about that part of the movie for me is how difficult it is to ever even have a person who was wrongfully convicted sit down on a one-on-one basis and share with you the sexual violence that they experienced when they were incarcerated. We all sort of know that that happens. When you walk into a prison, there's a sign that says, report sexual violence, and yet in the 2 decades that I've practiced law, I have never once, including in my role as the director of the Innocence Project, ever had a person tell me that they were sexually assaulted, even when my client's jaw was wired shut. He wouldn't tell me what happened to him. And so for this man to share that part of his story is really compelling. And so if I could just take a moment before we start to talk about compensation and how we could possibly remedy that, we have to acknowledge the fact that it's a tremendous ask to have a man who has had to endure that sort of violence, who his entire psyche was dependent upon him forming sort of coping mechanisms for dealing with that. To break that down and discuss that on a one-on-one basis is one thing, but to share it for the world to see is another, and to be cross-examined by attorneys about that experience is truly something else. And it's a big ask, and I think it requires us as human beings to really be willing. And I was so taken by what one of the participants or one of the inquiries said of what are the stories? And that is the story, right? That's one of the most heart-wrenching parts of the miscarriage of justice. And so connecting to the story and encouraging persons who have been wrongfully convicted to tell their story is a huge part of what the Innocence Project is trying to do. And every year when I go to the national conferences, there's workshops where we bring the exonerees there to try to, in every way healthy, learn how to tell their story. So it's a really good question. I'm really glad you brought it up. Yeah.
And I would just add to that, something that I was really struck by in watching the movie was we focus on the wrongful conviction and the individual who's trapped there who's in fact innocent. But how many of you think that that's the way we should treat our prisoners, even when they are guilty? And they say that how we treat our prisoners reflects who we are as a society. And I don't think that's how we should live or exist as a society. So when I look at, thank you. When I look at one step we should take in the state of Colorado is we should eliminate private prisons. We have 3 for-profit prisons. They operate for profit. If I told you prosecutors in my office or public defenders or judges were paid a profit based on what they did, you'd be outraged. I don't know why we allow that we should not allow that to exist in our prison system. We have 3 in the state of Colorado. They hold almost 20% of our inmates. The legislature sent $78 million of our taxpayer dollars to private prisons last year. They should be banned from the state of Colorado.
I have so much to say, I'm not even going to look at Bill and Laura because they're going to take the microphone out of my hand. We have 3 private prisons that hold 20% of our prisoners, and I will tell you, I'm pulling this number out of my hat, but they are probably responsible for 80% of the medical denial of medical care cases that come into my office, people seeking help, because their interest in profit is not in providing medical care to prisoners, and it's scandalous. So thank you for bringing that up, Michael. Just briefly on sexual violence in prison and jails, it's rampant. And I just want to say, you know, we live at a time where this is still culturally acceptable in some of our movies and television shows to make jokes about it. And really, when you spend time with people who are incarcerated, it's not funny. And it cannot, it really shouldn't be socially acceptable anymore to make jokes about that in our culture and our movies. So just think twice about that before you laugh at those jokes. It's not funny. And what was the original question? Compensation. Our compensation statute that Michael referenced, the $70,000 a year per year of wrongful incarceration, is currently being litigated by me in a case of wrongful conviction for more than 28 years in Denver, a Denver case. The client is Clarence Moseseel. I want to give a quick shout out to Nicole Terry, who's an investigator in the audience who worked tirelessly pro bono on his case for years and really helped. But this is another example of why politics matters. So there was never any physical evidence tying him to the crime. The victim originally said she couldn't see who did it. She then named other people she was with that night. After she had a dream in the hospital, she woke up and first started naming our client. He always maintained his innocence, asked for DNA testing. The Denver Police Department took the biological evidence and threw it in the trash dumpster. It could never be tested. He sat in prison for 28 years. And finally, you know, the other thing we haven't talked about, and I thought you were going to allude to it before, Michael, is the other problem with wrongful convictions is, as a society, what that means is that the true perpetrator is still on the streets, presenting a huge public safety problem. I think about this all the time. Mr. Abron Arrington's case is a little different because I think the true perpetrator is now deceased and did get punished. The men who did the crime that Billy Edwards is in prison for have not been held accountable 20 years later. So we ought to worry about that, and I wonder every day how many other crimes they committed. In Mr. Moseseel's case, the true perpetrator was later found by the Denver DA's office to be a serial sexual predator and convicted in another rape that happened about 1.5 miles away several years later. They did not reopen the investigation, let my client stay in prison. He then later, that true perpetrator later started making admissions, and the Denver DA's office fought us for years to keep Mr. Moseseel in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And now what's happening is the Attorney General of the state of Colorado, again, your taxpayer dollars at work, are fighting his request for compensation now that he has won a new trial, and at that new trial, a jury acquitted him. Because the new jury heard the evidence, including the fact that this other rapist said he did it. It's not hard, folks. He's obviously innocent. Why would he have asked for DNA testing all those years? It is not hard to get on the right side of this one. But your Attorney General is currently on the wrong side of this one. And we are set for trial in February, but my hope is that we have a new Attorney General by then who will see the light and do the right thing. And I just want to maybe close out by thanking Bill and Laura again for such a great event.
No, thank you all so much. The discussion this evening was so powerful after such a powerful film, and so great to hear from so many experts. And I'd say in a night that had moments of feeling pretty down and pretty tough, I think we see some bright lights here as we see a district attorney that looks at things from an ethical perspective, attorneys that are willing to fight for free to help people, family members that continue fighting and keep that strength, and you know, someone fighting for an organization that is fully supporting these individuals and helping to fight that fight. So thank you all so much for what you do. Thank you for being here and being part of this discussion. And for everyone here that would like to help and would like more information, we will be sending out more info. We'll have more information on the website. We'll make sure to get that to all of you. If anyone is interested in chatting with us, come on down and chat on your way out. And we are going to respond to text questions as well. We'll try to get our folks to help get us some answers in word form, text form, and we'll get it to you in some way via the interwebs. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening, and we'll see you in 2019.